I've been listening to a number of spaces and streams about the direction of US foreign policy. If you can see it as a top spinning and about to run out of energy and topple over, I think that is probably the best metaphor for American foreign policy. I have given up trying to work out what Trump is trying to do. Should we be surprised? I'm old enough to remember Obama promising peace while campaigning and sending troops to Afghanistan after he became president. So that's how American presidents roll. Is it because Trump is senile and suffering from dementia? Who knows? The point is that it doesn't really matter if you're doing the wrong thing for reasons of senile dementia, being mad, or moronic. It's the wrong thing, and the same consequences will follow. And for the same reason that if you fall off a tall building for moronic, mad, or if you are pushed off by an evil person, then the consequences are the same. You will land very hard, and there will be a splat, and your life will be over. In the case of an empire, your empire will be over. So it is perhaps the characteristic of sea empires that they behave like teenagers who won the lottery. So they will have no restraint on their behavior. They think they can get away with everything, anything, because might is right, and all who are less mighty than they are must be wrong, and therefore to be bullied, intimidated, exterminated, etc. And that's how they roll. What is the difference between land empires and sea empires? The real difference is, if you think of a land empire that has done the necessary to get where they are, and they didn't win it in a lottery as a teenager, then I think you will be able to understand the difference. One of the other things I've heard from people complaining about their government and being worried about World War III is the gerontocracy that is the rule for American presidents. Is it really the rule? I mean, there have been non-octogenarians or septuagenarians in office, but the point is, maybe, well, I've heard it said elsewhere that American presidents are not really supposed to govern America. They're just supposed to be like the British monarch, just allowed to preside and may be allowed to do a few little things that are not too controversial and then claim credit for it. Important things like US foreign policy is not part of their domain, and maybe the powers that be, the deep state, finally persuaded Trump that it is not his business to interfere in American foreign policy. He should leave it to the experts like Lindsey Graham and the others who run the deep state. It's too complicated for him. They will allow him to occasionally tweet or truth something that he thinks somehow explains and justifies the positions that he takes, but really they are indefensible, really. if you break your promises, then you're a liar, or you are incompetent, one or the other. Why are liars and incompetents allowed to take the most important position in the whole wide world, become the president of the world's number one superpower? Um, we don't know. But some of us may have heard of the Praetorian Guard, which is basically the military of the Roman Empire, assassinating Roman emperors who didn't fall in line with the wishes of the military. And you can understand why it would happen. The military is a muscle, they control the weapons and the men who wield the weapons. So you would expect people to be, or even people in high places, to be afraid of the might of the military and, of course, the police. So people are afraid and confused and don't quite know what to think. I suppose sooner or later we will just go back to blaming the Jews again about the chaos in the Middle East. Now, this is something to do. The identity of Jews is actually very important for the identity of Gentiles. And this has never been resolved. I believe I have the answer, and the answer is as follows. If you believe in the Abrahamic God, you are obliged to acknowledge the existence of Jews, and you are also obliged to observe them and consider their behavior. And if you observe them properly instead of blaming them for everything, you will know that they are just as divided as Gentiles are. We already know that not all Gentiles believe in the same God, because there are Hindus and Buddhists and other kinds of people who do not believe in the Abrahamic God as Gentiles. But we know that for Jews, at any rate, they are all supposed to believe in the Abrahamic God. And that is the most interesting thing about them. Because if God exists, he's saying Jews are not allowed their First Amendment rights. And this is something Jews have not formally acknowledged or let alone resolved. So does God, if he exists, mean for Jews to have their First Amendment rights? I do keep saying that the Quran supports the First Amendment. But this is at odds with the no-hide laws and the Ten Commandments. But then, if you look at Jews now, you will see that half of them are secular, meaning that they're not observant, they are not making it part of their weekly routine to observe the Sabbath, and they are heretics who attract the death penalty. And this would indicate that the Torah is now too hard for them, and they should switch to an easier religion, something that is Judaism light. And we already have Islam and Sharia. So actually, the answers are already there, and they haven't been there, since yesterday or since I was born. They've been there for centuries. I just happen to have arrived at all these conclusions that nobody is able to discuss with me, because they, I guess, they feel they have to cling to what their elders say, if they have any elders at all. Obviously, Christians will not like me saying that Christianity is idolatry and blasphemy, though really they should concede when they realize that they have no arguments to use against my repeated accusations. So they cannot defend themselves against accusations of idolatry and blasphemy. They may try asking trained theologians, senior bishops, archbishops, even the Pope, and I'm afraid they will find no effective way of defending themselves against accusations of idolatry and blasphemy, and they should just concede that Christianity is indeed a religion of idolatry and blasphemy. And of course, rabbis who know what I'm doing should be supporting me and congratulating me, and Muslims too, who only wish to marginalize me and half acknowledge me. And so what is the problem of these hypocrites? Not to put too fine a point on it, they are hypocrites because on the one hand they have no answer to my accusations or questions, and on the other hand they think they can just ignore me, meaning that they don't really think they've won the argument. They can only pretend by sheer numbers to collectively agree to ignore me. It's not just Jews and Muslims, it's also white nationalists who wish to suppress the power and glory of secular Quranism, while they themselves have no solutions at all other than to carry on blaming the Jews, carry on voting, and carry on complaining about the Muslims. So there is actually no practical solution that they've come up with after all these years of my beginning to promote secular Quranism, which is since the year 2009. So what has this got to do with the gerontocracy? The gerontocracy are, basically boomers. I've been accused of being a boomer, but I think I like to think that I transcend these categories of being male or female or being, boomer or non-boomer, because fundamentally, I have not in any way modified my views. I have basically followed the logic of my conclusions. And after all these years of promoting secular Quranism, I have seen nothing to make me change my mind. I'm not known for blocking people or not disengaging with them just because they don't fall in line with my preferred opinions. I keep going. I keep arguing with the same old people over and over and over again. And what this has taught me is, a lot of psychology. So psychology is really working out why certain people do the things they do. They do the things they do because usually they say the things they do, and they say the things they do because they think the things they do. Now, obviously, there is always an argument about whether something is true or untrue. And usually it can't be resolved, does the earth go around the sun, or vice versa. But there are things that are unknowable in this life, such as the existence of God. But you don't actually have to die and go to heaven or hell in order to, send messages to the living and say, yes, it's true, God exists, hell exists, heaven exists. No, you don't, because what you need to do is understand that even if the Abrahamic God were a figment of the imagination of Abraham, it remains the case that religion is useful, because all religions are belief systems to do with morality and to do with law. And so if that is the case, we have this objective and easy to understand way of working out which the best religion for us is, don't we? There are only five world religions. The Eastern religions of Hinduism and Buddhism are, well, inferior because they have no empire. And therefore, we are left with the three Abrahamic religions, and Christianity has acquired Christians three global empires, but it is failing. And we also know from the last 250 years of Western history that the anachronistic institution of monarchy has been progressively removed from the Western political system until it is now finally extinct. There are no absolute monarchs now in the West. They are constitutional monarchies, but they are just there to confuse people, really, and that's why it has to be abolished. And this is what intellectuals who are Jews, Christians, and Muslims ought to be discussing. And when they finally resolve the issue, then everything will become clear, including the fog that seems to be descending on so many people as they contemplate the horrors of a nuclear holocaust. I'm saying that the solution is still, in theory, and actually in practice, simple, straightforward, and yes, and easy, because all it requires is for people to have real life conversations about important topics. So, the most important subject that we could be discussing at barbecues and dinner parties and gatherings is the nature and purpose of religion, what they all have in common, and what they're supposed to do. And I'm saying the least that any religion that's still around after so many millennia is frighten people in their 20s into marrying and becoming responsible married parents. That is the least, the very least your religion should be doing. And if your religion isn't doing that, then you have to take it out with the trash. But I also know that Europeans will be unable to make the distinction between the music of Bach and Handel and Santa and cathedrals and things like that to actually having a functioning religion. If they could, if the more intellectual of these people could be found to express these concerns, they would have been resolved a long time ago. But I don't even get questions about, what's going to happen to cathedrals under secular Quranism. So they don't even get answered, do they? They would be preserved as relics and their spaces used for, well, anything useful, I suppose, concerts, that sort of thing. There would be a few reserved for people who still want to be Christian and go to services, in the traditional way. But the empty spaces can be adapted for all kinds of uses, I suppose. As, well, these days, churches seem to be made into nightclubs. I've seen churches made into apartments. I don't know how practical that is. But anyway, it is perfectly possible for Sharia to be imposed with all the cathedrals and churches intact for people who want to carry on keeping them. Obviously, the situation would be different in different European countries. In Britain, there is the Crown Estate Commissioners who are responsible for managing the property of the Crown, which includes churches, cathedrals, and associated accommodation for clergy, etc. Um, but these are old things, and when we are back to the subject of a gerontocracy, sadly, with the average age rising, we will have a problem with the national character of the country you are living in. And since most Western countries have a rising average age, we will be dealing with, difficult people, fuddy-duddies, sticks in the mud who don't want to change their ways and don't know how to win the argument, but still want to win the argument because they think the fact that they've been around for longer or because they have more money than younger people gives them the right to do so. You can cut their crap by discussing who should win the argument, and the argument should, of course, be won by those who best wield the weapons of truth, logic, and morality. Now we come to the question of morality. Morality can only be objectively measured through dividing morality into systems of belief and regulations. Because, well, how else can you do that? You have to compare, the status of these different religious groups with each other, and then you can decide which one to choose for yourself and for your country. And I'm saying, if you're being sensible and nationalistic, then you would want to choose the best religion for both yourself and for your country. And I'm saying there's only one rational and moral choice, and it's only your neurosis, your Islamophobia, your anti-Semitism that is preventing you from seeing that, because people who cannot be reasoned with are either suffering from senile dementia or they're just imbeciles or morons or suffering from some learning disability or are behaving like women who can't be reasoned with. Sadly, a lot of men cannot be reasoned with because they are fundamentally infantilized. Many of them are older than me, some of them may be younger, but they have fought themselves into this corner, and the only way they think they can survive is to carry on fighting and defend the indefensible. So if you're talking about morality as a Westerner, you have to, at the end of the day, refer to a list of codified principles, and the most well-known of them would be the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments forbid idolatry and blasphemy. And Jews and Gentiles of the West would know this. And therefore, the most important issue to be discussed, if we can even entertain the idea that God might exist, is to ask ourselves whether Christianity is idolatry. Why won't Jews and Muslims support me in this endeavor? I know there are some Muslims who have the practice of arguing with Christians. They don't seem able to accept that my way of just coming out with it and accusing Christians of idolatry is the quickest way of doing it. Some of them seem to favor a very tedious and alienating Q&A session, which requires the cooperation of the Christian concerned, and usually they won't cooperate. And even if you think you've made them say a silly thing that contradicts their own belief system, they're not really understanding what you're arguing about. So I guess I'm saying that I need more more authority and seniority within the people who wish to change the system. But again, they are mostly just looking at their shoes, looking at the ground, refusing to look around because they're comfortable in doing what they've been doing for quite a while. They know they don't want to lose subscribers or viewers by saying anything that their viewers and subscribers might find upsetting and alienating. And really, they are behaving in a way that is no different to news outlets like CNN or Fox News or any of these news outlets. They are playing the game of trying to be popular and therefore submitting to the lowest common denominator and not exactly extending the boundaries of debate or assisting in the resolution of long-standing political, social, and economic problems. So I think the people who have disengaged with me are to blame. What is the mindset of the people who disengage with me? I fear it is to do with being old, really, because young people at least would have the energy to argue, but old people regard their entire lives as something sacred and not to be questioned. And they will get very upset if you say, well, the things you believed in, the music you liked, well, they were signs of really bad things to come. And to still love these things is, and refusing to consider the consequences of a culture of sex and drugs and rock and roll makes you part of the problem. And they are part of the problem. And I do see that I am talking to a civilization of infantilized men who are feminized and who don't understand why their women reject them. Yes, they are being replaced because they're not marriageable. And they're not marriageable because A, they don't want to get married, and B, even if they wanted to get married, nobody wants to marry infantilized, feminized men who are stupid, scared, and skint. And that is why the matriarchy will continue to replace them and invite foreign men from other continents to come and replace them. And this is why their women will continue to vote for political parties who will not be that hard on immigration, because fundamentally female voters are women who despise men who are stupid, scared, and skint, as well as sick, mentally ill, ailing, and compete with them to be women. So there's really no need to blame Jews at all. You you all did it to themselves, and but sadly, the belief that Jews are to blame has become a sacred belief to the gerontocracy, the gerontocratic anti-Semites who actually can't even make out a charge sheet. You would expect, if you're really, an eager beaver anti-Semite, you would jump at the opportunity to make out a charge sheet and show how Jews are guilty of this and that, and how they've always, cunningly planned your downfall by all these historical acts that they did. I actually go around inviting them to do so and asking them, surely they must know a lawyer prepared to help them in this endeavour of drafting a charge sheet for the crimes of the Jews. But I've just been told to leave them alone. So even they cannot defend their their anti-Semitic tropes. So I obviously have a different narrative. I'm saying Jews are also the pawns of the Anglo-American Empire, and this provoked such an explosion of pinheads that they instantly forget what I say. But also Jews themselves find it difficult to accept that they have been made pawns of, that they have yes, they have been made the cat's paw of the Anglo-American Empire. Michael Malzahn, you're very welcome. Long time no speak. Maybe you'd like to join me? So before Mike joins, I want to sum up what I think is the problem. The problem is not that there is no solution, it is that neurotic, moronic, lunatic people who have been lying to themselves for centuries are not able to recognize the solutions, nor are they capable of using them. So, because they're suffering from senile dementia or a range of learning disabilities, or they just refuse to acknowledge that they've been wrong and would rather die than acknowledge the power and glory of secular Quranism. Good, Michael is coming on. I actually, okay, I don't know what this Ibn Taymiyyah person. I mean, it's like, all these Muslims, they hate each other and they condemn each other. And of course, they have their own heretics. So Ibn Taymiyyah is deceased, right? He's a deceased Islamic scholar and jurist. But the point is, they're not allowed to execute each other for incorrect beliefs because of chapter 2, verse 256. But the problem with these Muslims is that they keep ignoring their own rules, and that's why they get into trouble. So I don't know what these Alamites believe Um, but I don't really care what Muslims believe. I just think, Sharia allows them to believe whatever nonsense they can. It is the First Amendment that comes from chapter 2, verse 256. They've all got really complicated histories. And then you get bored and tired. It's it's a pain trying to understand their history. Hello, Mike.
Hey, what's up, Claire?
I'm well. How have you been?
Oh, I'm doing well myself. Just got back from Germany. My first venture into the old world.
Right, your first visit to Germany.
My first visit out of the Western Hemisphere.
Oh, really? What made you decide to go to Germany?
My sister invited me. She was taking my nephew. He just graduated with a master's in European history. And she's like, well, I don't know if I want to spend 2 weeks alone with him. You want to come? I'm like, sure, free trip to Germany. Why not?
Oh, great. So what did you see?
A lot of buildings, a lot of statues. You guys have some great architecture over there in the old world. Down here in Florida, where nothing was built until the 1960s, it's all pretty plain. Saw the Gothic Cathedral in Cologne.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly
And
not.
there's a McDonald's very near it, isn't it?
There's there were
Just next to it, virtually. I remember from the train. I seem to.
Yeah. You get right off the train station. It's right there. We got off the train at night. There was a bunch of Goths outside the Gothic Cathedral. I thought it was funny. There were a bunch of people doing some weird circle thing. I thought they were Arabs at first, but I think maybe they were Hindus. There's Burger Kings on some of the train platforms. But we happened to be there May 18th. Did you know there's an International Museum Day where all the museums are free?
Oh, how nice! And you were there for that?
Yeah, we went to pay to get in a museum, and they're like, "Oh, it's free today. It's International Museum Day, middle of May."
Right. I wonder if we have it in the UK. They should, though. Quite a few of them are free.
Yeah. They said it was pretty much international. Yeah, we saw some Van Goghs, saw some Monets. Anyway, we were in Berlin. We flew into Frankfurt, took the train to Berlin, stayed a couple nights in Berlin. They have a museum island. There's a big cathedral there. I don't know if when you rule the world as the Khalifa, you'll destroy all the statues and stuff or not.
No, Pete. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that because I suspect people think that's what I'm going to do. No, it's a they'll be turned into museums or whatever it is that white people want to do with them, other than worship in them because they don't want to worship in them. They just admiring them, and it's not just Westerners. I mean, I think a lot of Chinese tourists visiting European cathedrals. So of course they should stay, and their acoustics are great. So I was thinking musical performances would be, a good thing to hold in them.
One of the castles we went in, they still do musical performances in. But here in America, you know who CARE is?
CARE, some Muslim thing, right?
Yeah, the Council of American Islamic Relations. When they were first formed in 94, they were after the first World Trade Center bombing is when they formed. One of the first things they did was petition the Supreme Court to remove the statue of Muhammad. So, well, I guess it's not really a statue; it's a frieze.
A frieze, yeah. They should be told to go jump in a lake. They're so dumb.
That's what Rehnquist told them. Of course, that was before all this woke stuff and whatnot. So we'll see if they petition him again. And of course, the IOC has called for an international blasphemy law 2-3 times now.
These Muslims, they are so dumb. The reason why the crashed and burned, their caliphates that crashed and burned, is that they ignore their own rules. And I've been trying to explain to Americans, the whole point of the American Republic was so the founding fathers could get away from this absolute monarch who says, well, I can sign your death warrant, so you better watch it, kiddo. And that's why American presidents can be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, or stuff like that, with the idea that American presidents know they're not above the law, and it's so simple. And then I hear so many Americans wanting a king. It's
Oh, well, we just had the No Kings protest this weekend.
yeah, but that's so crazy. It's like, you haven't got a king. Why are you talking in such a nonsensical way?
I think they're saying they believe Trump is trying to make himself king.
Yeah, but he's crazy. I mean, he's disappointed so many MAGA people. I mean, they're all kind of horrified. It's like, we voted for you to stop these endless wars, and you're just going to start another one.
What, with Iran? You think we're going to war with Iran? Nah.
Yeah. So I was talking about this earlier with somebody, and I said, look, I'm old enough to remember Obama being voted in because he said he would stop these endless wars, and the moment he became president, he sent more troops to Afghanistan. So this is what American presidents do. It's just the fact that the American president, they have to start a war.
Right. Well, that's why some people are against the deep state. These guys are, they run as outsiders, and then once they're in, the deep state tells them, no, we got to do this, and they say, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah, or else, you know what happened to JFK, don't you? You've heard of the Praetorian Guard in the Roman Empire, haven't you? Well, watch it.
Right. Or Ludwig II. Do you know who Ludwig II
the
was?
castle builder.
Yeah, the castle builder, and then he drowned in 3 feet of water. He was bankrupting the state, so we went and saw that castle. It was funny, actually. I talked to a Irishman, and he was married to a Brit, and I guess her mother, old English woman, outside that castle. We were waiting for our tour, and I said, "Yeah, we got one of these in Florida. Of course, it's made out of cardboard, but." And he said, "Yeah, the Nazis pretty much told Disney, you better model that after this castle here."
Which castle was this?
It's down outside of Fusen. It's the one, like the Cinderella Castle in Disney World in Orlando is modeled after it. It's a big tall. It's not even. He didn't build, but maybe 10% of it or something. But
but it looks it looks great, doesn't it? I mean,
I've
seen pictures
it looks really
It's
cool.
like, wow.
Yeah, it's got a couple little towers on the side, and his throne room was completed, but then the throne's gone. They don't know where that disappeared to, and he lived.
Neuschwanstein, is that the one?
Yeah, it begins with an N. Something one of them long German words when they slam 3 words together.
In southern Bavaria.
Yeah, it's way down near Switzerland. Yeah, and Ludwig II was building it, and then he drowned mysteriously.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I was recently watching Cromwell, played by I'm trying to remember now. But anyway, there was a movie about the trial of Charles I. And he made this point, like, by what authority do you, Oliver Cromwell, a commoner, have the right to try me, the king? And Cromwell had no answer, really, because I mean, the logic of being king is that you have to be above the law in order to give the law, right? Because if you think of how kings used to run their kingdoms, they would, go up and down the kingdom to settle the disputes of their subjects. And in order to be in this position, they would have to be logically and necessarily above the law. In the same way that if you're a parent and you want to impose a bedtime of 7, your own bedtime cannot be 7. It's got to be later, and it certainly cannot be earlier, or you won't be able to do it.
That's funny. That's what I always argued as a little kid. Why do you get to stay up when I have to go to bed? It's not my fault I was born after you.
I never asked to be born. Right.
That's right. I never asked to be born. Just because my older brothers and sisters are older, how is this fair? But when you're a child,
you'll understand when you're older.
That's right, and you do. But it's interesting. So, have you ever seen Yemeni's Front?
This is the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Yemeni.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He looks like he's a little short guy. He goes to Speaker's Corner sometime.
I have seen him there, yes.
Oh, you've seen him there? Yeah. He's got
you didn't come to London. You didn't come to Speaker's Corner.
No, I got to do that. Next time, I'll come to London. I'll come stay with you, Claire. And we'll hang out. We'll go to Speaker's Corner. I got to go up to Coventry to say hi to Mohammed up there, COVFF, the Coventry and Faith Foundation guy. I've been banned from his chat, but he still lets me on backstage. One of the last Muslims who let me on. Oh, have you seen the Orthodox Muslim?
Yes, he's quite funny.
He is kind of funny. He's, I guess he's out of Toronto.
Yeah.
I managed to sneak on, but he was only taking Trinitarian Christians, so he booted me pretty quickly. But
right. Can I try my thing on you? Because I think I have a series of questions that it is intended to shame atheists. Can I try my interrogation technique on you? Right.
Robbie.
Mike Malzahn. You'd like to believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't expect it to be so easy. Therefore, in order to make it logical for you to believe that good will be rewarded in this life or the next, you would have to believe in the Abrahamic God, because without the Abrahamic God, who could reward good and punish evil in this life or the next?
Well, only in the next. Society can reward good and punish evil in this life.
Yes, but only if the laws are just. But there's always a problem of there being just laws, but corrupt judges and corrupt governments. And so you need rules given by God to help you tell the difference between hypocrites and true believers.
No, the rules don't need to be given by God. The rules can be created by man. But yes, we're always in danger of there being hypocrites.
Well, there are many people.
Rules. That's one of the reasons I don't want Islamic, any sort of Islamic law. Look at the woman in Indonesia. They threw her in jail for asking if the mosque could turn their loudspeaker down.
Yes, I know you bring that up, but I
love that story.
I know, but it's of course, you being an Islamophobe would love and collect all these stories of Muslims not following their own rules. I understand that, but I'm saying that is a problem. That's why there are basket case countries whose caliphate has crashed and burned, and it's actually the easiest thing to prove that the reason why their caliphate crashed and burned was because they ignored their own rules. So,
or because it was a caliphate. So again, back to my point about Yemeni, when Assad was deposed, he on his channel, and I thought his chat was going to revolt against him. He's like, no, we need to bring Assad back. you're supposed to follow the ruler. There's a hadith. I know you're a Quranist, but the hadith, there's one that says, even if the ruler steals your wealth and lashes you, you should follow him. So
well, yeah, that came from nowhere. And obviously, okay, I'm trying to tell these Muslims that the reason why they keep
you
breaking
can't say
their rule.
Muslims like that. That's
What?
very, very racist. You can't say trying to tell these Muslims like that.
Is that racist? Well, Muslims are not a race.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, but they're very stubborn, and obviously they're not, going to take anything from me because they think they know better because they were Muslim for longer than me and stuff. But the problem with these Muslims is that they don't read their own book, and also even if they did read their own book, if you ever speak to Saudis, that one of their main complaints is that Islamic scholars in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia often get put in jail for having the wrong interpretation of the Quran, the interpretation that their ruler disliked. So being an absolute monarch, as MBS is, Mohammed bin Salman, he can sign their death warrants or throw them into his dungeons, and they don't want that to happen. So they play ball and keep their opinions to themselves. So I'm saying for these Muslims, they need to understand that the reason why they've crashed and burned is because they didn't get this thing about the four rightly guided caliphs. The four rightly guided caliphs were not kings. They were not kings, but the ones after that, they were absolute monarchs who obviously abused their power and exercised their ability to execute or imprison Islamic scholars who didn't quite agree with their interpretation.
Sure. I mean,
and then the founding fathers, hallelujah and hooray. They came along, but it seems that nobody has quite digested the lesson about the difference between a monarch and a republic.
Right. Well, it's funny because, again, in the Hadith, Muhammad said the greatest generation is, the Sahaba was his generation and his companions. And Islam's going to get worse and worse the longer we go away from it. So even within
they just
Islam,
have to go back to the Quran, but they don't want to do that. If you talk to them, it's like they worship MBS. Some of these Arabs, they do. And to be fair to these Muslims, most of these Sunnis live in kingdoms. So they have to mind their P's and Q's. The Jordanians, the Qataris, the Saudis, etc. The Gulf states are Gulf kingdoms.
Right. Mohammed VI in Morocco, I think his family controls about 60% of the economy.
Yeah. So
but isn't Abdullah II of Jordan, didn't he go to Oxford?
They're all being colonized. Their minds have been colonized by Western ideas. So
but why did the Arab Spring fail so badly?
It was meant to fail. It was deliberately.
Tunisia had one peaceful transfer of power. What's the Islamic party? It begins with an E, Indada or something. One, and then like 2 years later, they lost the election because they became too Islamic. And you thought, wow, they had a peaceful transfer of power. They went back to a more secular governance, and then the current guy just like dissolved parliament and was ruling like a king.
What you mean, Al-Sisi?
Well, no, that's Egypt.
Indonesia. Well, Indonesia is completely. It submits to Washington.
Yeah, no, not Indonesia, but yes, Indonesia. I mean, since Suharto, they had what? Suharto and Sukarno.
Sukarno and Suharto.
Right. The first guy in 65, he killed like a couple million communists. The second guy ruled until the mid 90s or something for 32 years. And then who was it? Joko Widodo. And now they got a general, but he was elected. But they've had some peaceful transfers of power since the 90s. But no, Tunisia is what I was saying. The Arab Spring, right, started in Tunisia. The vegetable hawker guy set himself on fire.
Well, I really think the whole thing was a psyop anyway. It's like, the West saying, we gave you a chance, we gave you Arabs a chance to try democracy, and you just messed it up. Oh, you're stupid, you're moronic,
Okay.
so you have
So,
to listen to us
right.
or
So,
live under a military dictatorship.
so we were the supporters of the dictators, right? I think Tunisia was Ben Ali, right? Had been in power for 30 years or something. Obviously, Mubarak in Egypt. Abdullah II we've supported, but there wasn't really an Arab Spring there. So we did support the dictators, and then we supported the revolution against the dictators, only to prove they're not ready for democracy. Well, Morsi was elected in Egypt, right? He's Muslim Brotherhood, and then Sisi came in and couped him. So
Yeah, so Sisi is a Western puppet.
Right. So why would we remove our puppet Mubarak to replace him with a Muslim Brotherhood guy, to remove him to replace him with another military guy?
Well, just to give them the impression that they're incompetent, but
Okay, yeah, just for fun, just
for
hey,
fun. Well, of course, but the thing is,
we'll give you one election, then we'll remove your guy again and put in another.
Yeah, because because you're stupid and you're corrupt and you can't run anything properly. You just have to listen to us. That's always been the Western narrative.
Right.
But also,
was Nasser our boy? Did we put Nasser in power with his pan-Arabism back in the 50s?
Well, wasn't he assassinated?
Probably. They're all assassinated at some point.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, any Muslim country that adopts representative democracy is doomed, really, because in fact it's un-Islamic to divide your state religion into sects. Yes. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a verse in the Quran that says that. They ignore that too, So I'm done with telling them that that there's this verse, there's that verse, and you've ignored it, and they instantly forget because they obviously don't want to know. So they I just want to check if Nasser actually was assassinated.
Yeah, I got his wiki page up right now. I'm trying to get down to death.
Yeah.
Assuming chairman.
Or am I confusing him with Sadat, who was assassinated?
Sadat was assassinated. Yeah, I was actually homesick from school the day Sadat was assassinated, and they and what was it, 81? Me and Rosie O'Donnell. But anyway, I remember
sounds like a song. Yeah.
I remember seeing it on TV. The military
actually, he died.
Right.
He died of natural causes, I think. His the combination of smoking and working long hours contributed to his poor health. Okay, but
yeah.
But anyway,
do you know Egypt and Syria was a combined country at one point in the mid 50s?
It doesn't surprise me, but anyway, I mean, if you look at the borders of these African countries, you'll know that they were drawn deliberately with the intent of causing divisions.
Oh, I agree totally. I don't know.
Disputes.
I don't know why they don't redraw Africa. But who was it? The Kenyan ambassador. It wasn't the Ukraine war, but was it the Balkan War? Was it that long ago? But he came out and he said, listen, we deal with the countries that we've been drawn, and the Europeans did this to, divide and rule.
But it's a poison pill, as they pretended to, leave the Africans to their own devices.
Right. When George Clooney came in and chopped Sudan in half, I thought that was a good deal by him. Right. You got South Sudan now. Of course, the Sudan is, I was just reading on the BBC, the famine's getting bad in the Sudan with the RSF versus the government. So
Hmm.
even when you leave just Muslims in their own country, they attack each other. Look at Yemen. The Houthis versus the Sunnis. I
Well,
mean,
well, that's because they ignore their own rules,
right.
and they, they obviously say, well, we're just going to carry on with our stupid way of doing things because we've been doing this thing in this stupid way for centuries. So go away. And this is what happens when I tell Americans, it's like, hey, you're George Washington. He said no political parties. That's what he said, and you ignored it. Please, can you read his farewell speech to see how much of this advice you've ignored? And nobody does that. I don't think you've done that, Mike. I'm sure I've mentioned that to you.
Yeah, no, you sent it to me. I read most of it. I never did finish it, but yes, I mean, I would call it a miracle if I believed in God that America, after our revolution, Washington didn't declare himself dictator for life. Like you look at Haiti, revolted against the French in 1804. First thing the head general did was declare himself dictator for life, and it's been chaos ever since. Green in the South could have declared a country. It's funny. Woke people talk about the three-fifths compromise, which I still don't get why slaves would get any representation within Congress. But they're like, oh, black people were considered three-fifths of a person. This is so horrible, or something. It was a great compromise that allowed the colonies to stay together. You had these 13 colonies. Some had slaves, some didn't, although the Northerns had slaves at the time, but were against slavery. It's literally a miracle that America came out of our revolution as a country that held together. Obviously, we had a big civil war. A bunch of people died, and then after the Civil War, we remained a solid country, a superpower. It's quite miraculous. You see other, I don't know if you know this, Central America at one point tried to unite as the Federation of Central America. Well, Colombia had Panama at that time, but anyways, they had a soccer war. They literally had a war over a soccer game.
Well, I mean, it's because Americans rely on Christianity, and it's like there's nothing in Christianity that can keep your country together. There's nothing. I mean, if the New Testament were the only book of Christians, it just wouldn't work. It's like, what the hell? What's it about? It can't even tell a story properly. So it
That's
has
funny
to.
you mentioned that. I think post Civil War, Christmas became a national holiday. I think Lincoln made Christmas a national holiday as kind of a uniting thing, like, okay, we're all Christians, let's get back together. And I should probably Google that. Maybe I'm wrong on it.
Yeah, but the point is that there's nothing in the New Testament that was even written by one author that has, that is the most authoritative book. It's basically, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they're supposed to confirm, that Jesus lived and died, and it's like, who are these people anyway? And Paul, I mean, the Jefferson Bible excluded the Pauline epistles, and and really, Thomas Jefferson was a heretical Christian, and so were any of the founding fathers who rejected the Trinity. Heretics, heretics, heretics. And it's like, well, don't Americans know? Don't Americans care? And it seems that they don't know and they don't care. But it goes back to Christianity. The last 250 years of Western history was a series of revolutions that was about rejecting the institution of monarchy, and only the founding fathers understood. It's like, well, we don't want to not be Christian, but we want to be a republic. But since we know, as founding fathers who were enlightened and educated men, we understand that Christianity had the historical purpose of defending the divine right of kings, and therefore we can't have it in our republic. It can't be our official religion, because if we did establish a Church of America or anything like that, the institution of monarchy would creep back in, and we don't want that, presumably, said the founding fathers. I paraphrase, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's why secularism's important. We don't want any of these
Yes,
religions.
secular Quranism. So I'm saying Americans can even now just say, oh, U.S. Supreme Court, justices of the U.S. Supreme Court, we leave you to interpret the principles of the Quran that are the commandments of Allah. And that's how you do it. You get the justices of the Supreme Court to identify, number, and list all the verses pertaining to do this and don't do that kind of thing.
Why not just stick with the Constitution then? Why throw the Quran in the mix? That's got a bunch of terrible laws in it.
Well, I mean, in practice, you ignore it anyway. It's like, oh, come on, what is affirmative action? But an infringement on your First Amendment rights. So so much of your First Amendment rights have been infringed. Nobody cares. And obviously, social media platforms, they have to be nationalized, or you have to have one that is nationalized and therefore the most authoritative. I mean, now you have American or Western public opinion. It's like, I prefer blue sky. Oh, but I prefer X because I can say mean things about Jews and blacks, etc. So everybody is again divided by the social media platform that they favor. So it's got to be centralized.
So you want an NPR of social media?
What's NPR?
Oh, National Public Radio. That's the government run.
Yes, you need a supreme authority. I mean, imagine not having a Supreme Court in your country. You just go mad. I mean, you'll just break out into civil war if you didn't have a Supreme Court. But I'm sure there was a time when nobody thought to have a Supreme Court.
Yeah, the Supreme Court, I think for probably the first 100 years, they said had very little power. They didn't even have their own building. They didn't really interfere much. I think the Constitution was originally interpreted to only apply to the federal government, not to state governments. So
you have your state Supreme Courts, and then you have the federal Supreme Court.
And I think there's 8 states that have a religious test in it. You literally have to be a Christian to hold any sort of office. And it was struck down in, I think it was 1962. Was it Tasco versus Virginia? There was a guy who went to be a notary public. Do you guys have notary publics in the UK?
Yes.
People who stamp documents.
And swear oaths.
Right. So they said you got to swear oath to God. You'll not lie or whatever. And he says, well, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's when religious tests were struck down, that you can't force somebody to be a Christian to, be a judge or to be a governor.
But what you could do is actually have a morality test. And this is what I propose. You can't be a moral person if you're a liar, and you can't be a moral person if you believe in nonsense. So unless you can show some ability or a track record of being honest and the ability to know the difference between sound arguments and valid arguments, you shouldn't be allowed anywhere, you shouldn't be allowed in a senior position. You certainly shouldn't be even allowed to be a member of a jury. And it's really shocking. I spent months one summer trying to explain to somebody the difference between a valid argument and a sound argument, and I'm sure he didn't get it. He only pretended to.
Well,
but it's not that hard.
talk about believing in nonsense. I mean, Muslims have to believe in the unseen. It's one of the articles of faith.
Well, so do Jews. Nobody says Jews are stupid, but they believe in the same God. That's a point of the Abrahamic religions. It's that Jews, Christians, and Muslims are supposed to, or they claim they worship the Abrahamic God, but obviously Jews say, we are more correct, and Christians say, and Muslims say the same thing about their own, group. But I mean, it's obvious, the universe was not created by Jesus, whose mother was Mary. I mean, it's crazy how people, even to this day, want to believe in that. But I guess if you want to psychologize it, it's because they hate Jews and Muslims so much that they want to reject the God of these Jews and Muslims to show them how much they hate them, and that's why they claim to believe in nonsense and worship the Trinity. I mean, that's the only way.
The Trinity argument is always quite humorous. But actually, if I can get onto the Orthodox Muslim next time, I'll put Christian Defender in my title and try to explain. So to me, they're all nonsensical. They're all just crazy. Again, if you look at jinn, if you read the book, The World of Jinn and Devils in the Light of the Quran and Sunnah, or just read the Quran. I'm sure you've read the 72nd surah, or was it 55-56, where it says, where men and jinn have not touched, sometimes translated have not gone in, is a reference to possibly jinn having sex with humans. Again, if you go back to Ibn Taymiyyah, he says it was common for humans to marry jinn and to have children with them. I see no evidence of this.
Well, I mean, Greco-Roman culture has something similar. They have the idea that Zeus would come down from Mount Olympus and seduce and rape mortal women and produce semi-divine offspring.
Demigods.
And Hindus have this sort of belief system too. And I know Christians, they talk about, what succubi and incubi. An incubus is a spirit that has sex with sleeping women, and a succubus is a female spirit that has sex with sleeping men. So I guess these ideas are not exactly unknown. I mean, probably, people sleep and they have sex fantasies, So it's not important, Mikey. It's not important. What's important is the rule of law. And I bet you haven't read secularquranism.blogspot.com. You haven't, have you?
I read your book.
Well, this is quite different because this blog was created by Vincent and me, and it is basically AI generated, but it's quite clever because its documents are quite short, about maybe 3 pages long, and it doesn't stretch your attention span too much, and I think it's quite humorous. So I hope you will read it and comment on it, and maybe annoy these Muslims with it, because I think my interpretation is superior to theirs, and obviously they hate me because they don't want me to hear me saying that the interpretation of a non-male, non-Muslim individual is superior to theirs. But I can easily use this argument against them. It's like, well, I know why your caliphate's crashed and burnt, because you still don't get it about the difference between being a republic and between being a monarchy. And they still don't care, and they know if they live in a monarchy, they can't be seen to be challenging the monarch. So they're not going to say anything. And the reason why America wants war with Iran is because Iran is a republic. and Iran is the one that actually is pushing back on American imperialism. So the Sunnis can't bear the idea that they've been wrong all this time, and 80% of Muslims are of the Ummah are Sunni, and only 20% are Shia. So the Muslims are confused too, and this is a problem. Everybody's confused, including the Jews. And I'd just like to.
That's why we need to get religion out of politics.
Yeah. But
Politics
okay. Well,
is confusing enough already. You throw religion.
no, it's not confusing. I'm making it very simple. It's very simple. If you're you know, I think you can grasp the concept of the hypothetical supreme authority, even if you don't believe in its actual existence.
Well, I would just go with absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like
Yeah.
So the four rightly guided caliphs, even they, I think Omar disagreed with Abu Barak at one point, but he said, "Well, you're the leader, so whatever you say goes." And then, obviously, when he died, and Omar became the second rightly guided caliph, he changed the law to go with his interpretation. And then, of course, I mean, isn't it fascinating that 3 of the 4 rightly guided caliphs were assassinated? I mean, I guess you can say Omar was killed by a slave, so you could maybe put him out. But Uthman was killed by Muslims, right? That's the rise of the Khawarij. And then Ali was also assassinated. And then you have the Battle of Camel, where Aisha, Muhammad's widow, attacked Ali because he didn't look into Uthman's assassination fast enough for her or something. I mean,
well, I think we can just assume that if you're emperor or king or president, somebody will want to come after you because they hate something you did. So it's not exclusive to Islam. When you think of so many American presidents who got who were assassinated. So it's just a feature of being the most powerful man around.
Sure, that's true.
But the point is
exclusive to Islam. I'm just saying, if you claim perfection, you would think your rightly guided leaders wouldn't be assassinated. Yes. What was the movie Unforgiven, where English Bob is on the train and he's saying, "Oh," and I guess it was after maybe Grover Cleveland was assassinated. I don't know. It was in the 1870s. He said, "Oh, this is why you guys need kings." No one would assassinate a king. Your hand would just shake thinking to shoot a king. You guys have presidents, so of course they get shot all the time. McKinley was assassinated. Obviously, Lincoln, Kennedy. Well, it was the curse of the prophet. You ever hear of the curse of the prophet?
No.
He was a half white, half Indian guy. I think it was the Battle of Tippecanoe, like in the early 1800s. He was missing an eye. He was like the Antichrist in Islam. Only has one eye, but he put a curse on any president elected in a year ending in a 0 would be assassinated, and it held up. It held up until Reagan, and Reagan was shot, but he didn't die when Hinckley shot him. But Lincoln, 1860. Maybe it was Grover Cleveland, 1880. McKinley. Oh, he would die in office. So McKinley was shot, and he was elected in 1900. Shot at maybe the World's Fair. Wilson was elected in 1920. He died in office. FDR elected in 1940. Died in office. Kennedy shot in 1960, and then Reagan was shot in after being elected in 1990, but didn't die. Broke the curse of the prophet.
Well, I'm going to make the
just
point
a little
that,
history for you, just some rambling history.
Yeah, well, talking about history, I think the narrative for the founding of America should be that the founding fathers were proto-Muslim. So then once it's accepted, then the Americans will go, hey, it's American to be Muslim because the founding fathers were proto-Muslim, and we complete their work. How about that? We complete their work by adopting Sharia.
Right. Yeah.
And the Sharia supports the First Amendment. So it's like, yeah, and it's American, it's Islamic and American, and this completes our manifest destiny to become what we were meant to become, and we now recognize our destiny. Hallelujah.
Well, you're going to have to get the Muslims to agree with the First Amendment first. And ironically,
No, you can remind them you're this wonderful role, and they love to have you, and I know they can't resist you. They want to kick you out, or they want to, and then invite you back in order to kick you out again, and you're like this yo-yo, and you make their very dull streams entertaining, and but they won't have me on. I was once on, I think it was Dots to Islam. Do you go on that one?
Dots Connect Islam. Yeah, I was banned the same night I was banned from Hamza's Den for asking if jinn can have sex with humans.
Well, ask some more challenging questions. But I know I saw this guy. He was going to talk to me, and then he received a phone call from Fawad, I think it was, saying, "Don't let her on, don't let her," and he didn't. So I waited and waited for nothing, because Fawad from Brazil,
Brazilian, yeah.
Fawad, or whatever his name is,
yeah. It was funny. So, and anybody can look it up. Hamza's Den, the Arena, episode 60. I was on. It was ironically right around Halloween 2023, I would say now. It was after I first joined YouTube. So I asked them if jinn can have sex with humans, and they went on for almost an hour and never answered the question. John Fontaine came on it towards the end and said they'll ask Allah to possess me. Anyways, Eliza Quick, who's a moderator, and that's apparently a male's name, Eliza, but he's a Russian. He said, go to Dots Connect to Islam. So the same night I went to Dots Connect, I asked him the same question. Fawad, the Brazilian, he's like, I'm 40 years old. I've never heard of this. And then one of the Arab guys was like, oh no, I know a sister who, gets aroused in her sleep all the time. That yes, succubus or incubus come to her in the night and have sex with her. And so it's totally possible, according to the one guy. The other guy was like, I've never heard of this, blah, blah, blah. And then they just banned me. So yeah, and then they let me back on. They are the one guys who let me back on. And Fazil then banned me. I forget what. There's the Dawa truckers on there quite a bit. Neil. But anyways, I'm banned from
I think
EF Dawa, Dawa Wise, Hamza's Den, Dots Connect to Islam, Dawa over Dunya, the American guy. I guess he's a Palestinian. He rolls his eyes a lot. He's kind of funny. The Fachiz.
Well, maybe.
Have you been on Fachiz? FEACHEZ, the black guy channel?
No, I was thinking, Mike, maybe we should have a regular stream talking about the hopelessness of these Dawa channels who dare not discuss these questions. I think we should do that. I'll have a think about the branding and stuff.
There you go. Ironically,
would you be prepared to do it?
Sure. And let's invite some Dawa guys. We'll see if we can get Ali Dawa on. He lets me on. He's almost always doing fundraisers. So anytime he has some questions, it's like, well, we're doing a fundraiser now. But Ben Hazim, the sheikh he has on, who seems to know a good bit about jinn. I asked him, like, can jinn have sex with humans? He's like, well, I don't know. I don't think they can have kids. And then I said, well, Ibn Taymiyyah in this book on the 22nd page says it was common. And he says, well, who am I to disagree with him? So he said, yeah.
It's just flashed across my mind that our spaces should be, sorry, our streams should be called our Muslims moronic monarchists.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, you talked about IBS or MBS. So
Well, I don't want to talk about particular rulers, but
right.
and then can caliphs be kings? So it's just these two things. So these morons will eventually get the message, however moronic and imbecilic they are. Can caliphs be kings? Are Muslim, are Muslims moronic monarchists?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly there's a story of where Omar, when he was caliph, he made a ruling, something to do with women, and some woman in the mosque like stood up and said, "Show me where this is in the Quran," and he couldn't, so he like repealed his own ruling.
Oh well, that's good of him.
Yeah, that's very good, mighty white of him.
Yeah.
But in the converse,
Okay.
like you said, you get was Ali usurped, and the hadith of pen and paper.
Well, I think it should be your channel. Should it be your channel and me as a guest?
One of these days, I'm gonna create a channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I
Do
call it
it.
Kafir Mike or Mike the Islamophobe?
It should be called pre-Islamic Mike.
Oh, there's the sliver of hope I may convert at any moment. They say the greatest Islamophobes become the greatest Muslims.
Yes, Khalid said that. Yes, there's quite a funny cartoon, the man with the clown face saying, "I hate Islam, I'm going to discover how stupid it is." And then he reads the Quran, and then the next thing, he says the Shahada.
Right, yeah. Once you read the Quran, you'll become a Muslim. Unfortunately, I've read 3 different translations of the Quran, and
No, I think it's a hadith that prevents you, because the hadith is so, well, most of it is so stupid.
Well, it's not even that. The hadith are stupid. I'll give you that. But even the Quran is stupid, and even the concept of God is stupid to me. To me,
Well, you need a hypothetical supreme authority. When things don't, okay, when the Supreme Court, imagine if you appealed, your legal question all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and you still don't get your what you think is the correct judgment. You'll think, well, in an ideal world, I would get the legal decision that I want, but since and I would say, in a way, that's kind of reaching out to God. Even when people say things like, in the best of all possible worlds, this thing that you want would come about, but since we don't, ha ha ha, it hasn't happened. It's that kind of thing, that kind of reasoning.
Right. Well, and that's one of the reasons not to believe in a God, because in all best possible worlds, the world is not even close to best possible.
No, but don't you see, Mike, that if most people believed, then they would be more likely to obey these laws, making the world a better place and refrain from murder, theft, sexual immorality, blah, blah. That is how we would get a better world, even if God doesn't exist. Because if we can all agree not to do these things, then we would have a high trust society where people are not routinely murdered and raped and robbed.
Sure. And so you're saying let's all just pretend to believe in God.
Well, yes. So you would create a culture when
Hmm. I think you dropped, Claire. I rule the channel.
Hi, Mike. I don't know what happened. I was.
It seems like Allah intervened, threw you
Yeah.
off your own channel.
Yes, I wasn't, clicking anything. I was, yes, leaning back and not doing anything. What was I saying? What was I saying?
You were saying we're all going to just pretend there's a God to make life more moral. I don't know
Oh,
why
yes,
we have
in order to virtue
God.
signal. Yes. So we're gonna. I mean, kind of like what the early Americans were doing when they were, you know, in order not to be accused of being a Muslim or atheist, they pretended that there was this thing called being a theist or a deist, and
Jesus, right?
yeah. So even now when you look up what these things meant, I suppose theism meant you were a proper Christian in the sense that you believed in the Trinity and worshipped it. And then there would be the other people who said, well, I believe in God, but I don't think he's Jesus or something like that, or
Right,
variations on that.
right. Well,
So,
deism is a belief in a creator that doesn't intervene. So yeah, there's no prophets. There's no God. God made the universe. I think even Einstein was a deist. He said, yeah, I think there's a creator, but the creator doesn't really care what happens. Yeah,
yeah,
he just
and
put things
Spinoza,
in motion, and whatever happens, happens. Um, Abigail
yes,
Adams actually wrote a letter about not being a deist necessarily, but she was a Unitarian Christian.
who was this?
John Adams' wife, Abigail Adams,
Right, right.
that there's only one God and Jesus wasn't God. I mean, there's a lot more Unitarian Christians than apparently the Muslims know. I mean, Jehovah Witnesses are Unitarians. The Mormons are Unitarians. There's again just a
Well,
whole.
the Mormons don't even believe in the Abrahamic God, but in Europe, that would have been considered heresy. If you look up Wikipedia, it would be under the heading of the Socinian controversy. So there were these Poles who started to deny the Trinity, and they were um, uh, marginalized and demonized by the Catholic Church, who accused them of heresy. But back to this idea of deism, Spinoza was accused of heresy and excommunicated because he was a pantheist. So he was saying, I believe in God, but not the Abrahamic God who gave us the Torah. I To me, the universe is God because it was always there, and ain't the universe beautiful, the star and the seas and the sky, and blah blah. So that was how he saw God as um, being the equivalent of the universe, but that was considered heresy by his Jewish community, and they kicked him out. Um, and now we have to ask ourselves why it is necessary, if we're going to enjoy the full benefits of this belief system, to believe that God is absolutely moral, perfectly moral, because he is capable of rewarding good and evil, and punishing evil in this life and the next, measure for measure. it is necessary to believe this. Otherwise, people are going to say, well, how would you know that good will be rewarded and evil punished if uh, there is no supreme being capable of rewarding and punishing people for their just deserts? I mean, then it wouldn't be logical. It's like, well, who's going to do it if God doesn't exist? So, so that's why it's necessary to believe that God is perfectly moral, or it just wouldn't be done.
Well, I mean, then you could just believe in karma. I mean, but yes, some people are not going to be punished for their misdeeds. That's just life. That's just the universe. It's funny you talk about, like, when Muslims ask me, well, who created the universe? I said, well, the universe is eternal, right? Like Esposa said, or whatever.
Yeah, but you
why
have
not
to
just
say,
replace the concept of God with the universe? Now, of course, then you go to justice. So, are you going to be punished in the next life for the deeds you did in this life? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. I don't know why you would think there has to be justice in the universe.
well, no, we
right?
want there to be justice in this life and the next, don't we? Because if you don't even want that, then you must be an evil person.
Well, you can want it all you want, but that doesn't make it true.
Well,
A
since when
rational
has
person would
truth
say,
been?
look at Stalin, look at Pol Pot, look at Mao. How many millions of people did they kill? So, yes, would it be nice to think they spend eternity in a hellfire? Sure, but they didn't get justice in this world. I mean, maybe Stalin was poisoned. They don't really know, but many
So
people
you
who've
don't
done
know.
evil
No,
things.
nobody knows. But we know from history about the Sadducees. So you know that the Sadducees denied the afterlife because they say, well, where does it say afterlife in the Torah? It says nothing about the afterlife in the Torah. So we refuse to believe in this nonsense, and the Sadducees are no more.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, obviously, if you did believe, then obviously you will be keener to obey the laws. And if all your religious community obey these laws, you're going to get along better, and you're going to cooperate with each other better to, defeat the enemy and increase your empire and blah blah,
So,
that sort of thing.
well, why wouldn't reincarnation make more sense to you then, if you believe in justice? Like, I have some hippie friends who believe in reincarnation, and I was talking to this one girl one time, and she's like, well, it's like, say you're very arrogant in one life, then you may be reincarnated with somebody who becomes crippled, or becomes, you have multiple sclerosis or whatever, and then you're dependent on other people. That's God or the universe's way of teaching you not to be arrogant, right? Like
Mhm.
disease, right? Like, when a 4-year-old gets cancer, you wonder, how does God allow that to happen? And then the reincarnation explanation would be, well, that soul is learning a lesson.
Mhm.
And so it comes back again and again and again until you reach nirvana, and you learn all the lessons you can learn. And I don't think there's
Yeah, it's being made
eternal
to repeat
punishment
a
within
year.
reincarnation. There's punishments within a certain lifetime, right? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, actually, ultra Orthodox Jews do believe in reincarnation because, they know that they're supposed to believe in an afterlife, and belief in reincarnation or heaven or hell is satisfying that requirement. But I imagine for people who believe in reincarnation only, it's not scary enough. Like you're going to be in hellfire for all eternity and blah blah. So it's not scary enough, and people think, oh, hey, maybe I'd like to come back again and enjoy all the, pleasures and beauties of life, blah, blah, blah. So they don't really get it that, that they're being, behaving all that badly. Because if you look at the rules of Buddhism or Hindu, I mean, Buddhism is basically codified Hinduism, isn't it? And it's actually quite hard to apply these, principles, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. It's not easy to apply, so they don't really do it properly, and that's why you won't have heard of any great Buddhist empire or any great Hindu empire, because they all crashed and burned because they all broke the rules in practice. Not that Muslims themselves don't break the rules, but because they're so clearly written and in their holy book, that they're not going to so blatantly break all the rules as Hindus and Buddhists do. Or Christians, they're the worst.
Okay, so you want empires to rule the world?
Well, I think it's only logical to suppose that because of the state of science and technology, and we will continue to live in a global empire, unless America blows itself up or the world up. We will continue to enjoy easy access to information and ideas, as well as easy travel. And for that reason, we will have a globalized empire. We don't want it to be a 1984 situation where it's all divided into blocks, such as East Asia, and Eurasia, and Oceania, and maybe the others I can't remember. So
that's interesting, because you Brits just pulled out of your empire.
Well,
Brexit. Like, you guys were in a pretty nice big block of, with some power and economic power, and you said, no, we're going to pull back to our little island.
Well, they didn't do it on purpose. I mean, World War One and World War Two should have been regarded as the second 30 Years' War, i.e., another European civil war, which is basically Britain trying to stop Germany from becoming the dominant European power. So that's why they picked a fight with the Germans in 1914, and then they picked another fight again in 1939. They were falling into their Thucydides trap. Thucydides was a historian in the times of the Peloponnesian War, and it was the Greeks. They didn't have a proper religion. They might have worshipped the same pantheon of gods, but basically they didn't have rules about, when to stop fighting, rules of war. And basically the Athenians and the Spartans fought each other because they didn't like the other ways of doing things. So the Athenians were, direct democracy, hooray. And the Spartans were saying, you're crazy. How can you trust the plebs, the hoi polloi to vote? They're stupid. And that was basically the basis of the political disagreement.
You made me think of when Game of Thrones, when the one guy said their gods are all wrong too.
But it would be blasphemy to say that about the Abrahamic God, because you sort of need him to be perfectly moral in order to even want to believe in him. So if somebody says, no, I wouldn't like to believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished, then it would be, well, that must be because you're an evil person, Mike. You do not want evil to be punished because you, Mike, want to escape your punishment for being an evil person. And that means we can ignore everything you say from now on, evil Mike.
Right. Well, that's always the question. What is good and evil?
Good is what God commands, evil what he forbids. Okay. There you go.
So, I mean, again, if you look within Islam, God commands you not to kill women and children, yet Muhammad killed women and children, right? Muslims will tell you, "Oh, our rules of war, you can't even cut down trees," which, of course, is an Old Testament, at least fruit-bearing trees. It's in the Old Testament. You're not supposed to cut them down. But when fighting the Banu Nadar, Muhammad ordered date palms cut down and burnt. So when you talk about a supreme ruler and following the rules, they get to bend the rules whenever they want.
Yeah. And some people might say, what's the point of having these rules if people ignore them in practice? And the answer is that even if they break them, you will know what kind of person they are if they break them. And you must have heard the expression, rules are made to be broken.
Right. But then you got to look at the rightly guided caliphs and Muhammad himself. But they're all rule breakers.
Yeah, but this is just to confirm that the proposition that rules are made to be broken. So when people made those rules saying you mustn't do this or that, they sort of knew that there will be all these people who want to break these rules, right? I mean that is always the problem, of people wanting to break the rules that you've just made.
And that's why you need a balance of power, checks.
Yes.
As we say.
Yes.
So you have an executive.
That's why we
branch,
have the Supreme Court.
Branch, you have a congressional branch. None of that exists within Islam. Islam talks about one ruler having absolute power. It's a horrible system. We've created a better system. Maybe a better system than our system will come out at some point, but having a legislative body that has a check against the executive body, that has a check against the courts, so far, I think that's the best system. Islam has no checks and balances.
The checks and balances would be judicial independence, the separation of powers, legislature, executive.
Okay, where is that in the Quran?
Well, it's not forbidden, so you can still keep, the best of what you have currently. Well, I'm not suggesting for one moment, Mike, that you'd have to abolish the separation of powers the moment you adopt Sharia. Not at all. So you'd still have all these good things, and yeah, you get to keep all these good things.
Okay, so for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but right, a judge in Islam is called a qadi, right? In Arabic. So fornicators are to be lashed 100 times. You know that, 24/2. Adulterers are to be stoned to death. That comes from the Hadith.
No, not in the Quran.
Not in the Quran, right? No. Omar said.
No, so it would be 100 lashes.
Okay, so let's stick with the 100 lashes. So apparently some woman, her husband's off fighting jihad for a couple of years or something, and he comes back and she's got a baby. So then the qadi rules that she's been pregnant for 3 years. Does that make sense to you? Is that a good bending of the rules, or is that a bad bending of the rules?
It's up to the husband to decide whether to accept this.
Okay. So he could say, I think the judge is wrong. She's obviously cheated on me and has had a baby since I've been gone. Lash her 100 times.
There would be an appeal court, for heaven's sakes.
I'm sorry, I missed that. There would be an
appeal court. It can't just be, there's only one court and you can't appeal from it.
Okay. Well, you're getting more and more secular all the time, but
no, it is not secular. I mean, I don't see how any of what of the current system is in any way illogical, or the therefore practical reason. You have your lower courts, and you have the high court and the appeal court and the Supreme Court, for really important matters that need to be discussed more than once. So I don't, I think people should just assume that God, if he exists, is common sense and logic and morality, unless you can prove otherwise. So as for rules that aren't followed, I mean, they're still necessary. So that sometimes people break rules, and then you can judge these people according to the rules that they followed or broke.
Right. Well, and that's why I don't believe in God, because I don't see any common sense in God's creation. I don't want to.
Why? What's so nonsensical?
Well, I don't want to be anti-feminist, but the menstrual cycle seems a horrible design. The digestive system, humans as a whole, our skin's too soft, our vision's too poor. We can't even fly. I think I should be able
We
to
can fly in planes.
I know, but I think I should just be able to jump with wings and fly. But so, do you think the digestive system's a good design?
Well, I mean, if you enjoy good digestion, why would you complain?
Well,
how's your digestion, Mike?
As they say, don't eat where you shit. I mean, you literally put out a byproduct that is detrimental to your health. I would think Snickers would grow on trees, and we wouldn't have to shit. You would eat what you want. People wouldn't get fat. You wouldn't eat too much. Like goldfish can eat themselves to death. Humans at this point are doing the same thing, right? We got diabetes.
Well, then we have this, the sins of gluttony, and it's like if you're not.
Yeah.
Well, the whole Abrahamic moral system is the idea that suffering is punishment for sin. So if you're in any way uncomfortable or feel you're being punished, examine your history and your behavior. That seems a sensible way of dealing with things.
Well, if I was a creator, I would make it so people couldn't overeat, couldn't be fat, couldn't be diabetic.
But then you'd be taking away their free will.
101. Why do you have all these diseases, right?
Well, you can't take away people's free will, because if the Abrahamic God exists, then the purpose of our lives is to pass the examination entitling us to go to the better place. So
yeah, even that's a horrible system.
Well, what system do you want there to be? You want us to be people without free will, who just...
No, I want you to have free will, but I don't want you to be punished for simple decisions. So you're saying like a 4-year-old kid who's fat and overweight and makes himself diabetic gets punished because he likes chocolate?
Well, you can attribute the fact that he's suffering from some disability because of bad behavior in a previous life, and then everything's sorted.
Oh, well, now you went to previous life, so now we're back to karma.
Well, you were talking about reincarnation, so
right.
You put the idea in my head.
Okay, right. And I said that makes more sense to me than so let's say a child is born and they have some disability. Let's say they're blind, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a punishment for actions? They were just born. They've done no actions.
Well, if you believe in reincarnation, that would be the explanation, wouldn't it?
Well, no, forget reincarnation. I'm assuming you don't believe in reincarnation. You believe in Abrahamic God, heaven and hell, punishment, reward. in this life or in the next life. I'm not sure, but let's say in the next life or in this life. So do you think a child born who's deformed, say you're just a dwarf or something, you're a midget, it's not terrible or something, but is that a punishment? Is that a test? Do you go to the old, oh, it's a test?
It's a test because, yes, I'm so glad you mentioned test because according to the book of Job, Job was being tested. He wasn't being punished because he hadn't done anything wrong. And his test was to not lose faith in God, even though he suddenly was deprived of all the things that he loved. Because the book of Job started with God and the devil having a conversation, and God saying, oh, look at Job. He's such a good guy. He's thanking me for all the wonderful things he's got from me. And the devil saying,
right.
yeah, he's only thanking you because he's got what he wants. Let's see how he behaves when he doesn't get what he wants.
Right.
So
pestilence
anyway, yeah. So Job passed the test, right? That's a moral of that story.
Sure. That's what the Muslims are saying right now. Look at the Palestinians.
Well, yeah, because the Palestinians. Well, the Palestinians are suffering because the Muslims have been so moronic, because they could easily win the argument, if they decided to use the ideological weapon of Muslim Zionism, but they're so filled with hatred for Jews that they have to equate Zionism with pure evil. And when I try to tell them that, look, Zionism is an Anglo-American imperial project. This marine empire has to control Israel, and also it has, all the prestige of being, the Holy Land, and they want to think that, they have assumed the white man's burden of protecting the Jews, and that's why. That's the official reason anyway for, being, maintaining their military and naval presence in Israel. And that's the reason. And Israel is an American colony. And all this stuff, like, we Americans are being controlled by Israel. No. America is an Israel. Sorry, Israel is an American colony, and if you understand that, everything makes sense. The neocons starting a war with Iran, why wouldn't they? And Israel is the unsinkable naval carrier. Right? I mean, that's it.
They're the third rail in politics.
Mm-hmm.
As we say.
Yeah, but the Muslims won't accept it. Because the people who hate Jews will say,
why do you think 2 billion Muslims can't defeat 15 million Jews? Just because America is backing?
Yeah, because they're stupid and they're divided, and they won't be told about anything. So yeah, what they could do, what these Muslims could be doing, is to say, well, we need a caliph to give us political leadership, because currently Sunni Muslims have no political leadership. There is no Sunni Muslim leader. It's not MBS, even though he controls Mecca. It's not the Saudis.
No, but some Muslims were saying it was Erdogan. They thought the Turks were going to rise up.
No, he can't, because Turkey is a secular state. It only, it's actually Iran. Iran operates a theocracy and has a supreme leader who, is supposed to be well versed in the laws of Allah. So, whatever you think of the Persians, they're the ones closest to this ideal. And all the Muslims who live in kingdoms, they're not even halal, and they can't bear. They can't face it. And also,
have you ever watched the Muslim skeptic.
Yes, Daniel Hakikatju. Yeah.
Daniel Hakikatju. Yeah, he's a Persian, but he's
He converted to Sunni Islam.
Yeah, right. He said his parents were secular Shia. But it's funny because he was big on the Iranians could, turn the tide against Israel and stuff. And so he's pretty much been takfired by, I guess he was buddies
Wahhabis.
with the Wahhabis, the Salafi. He was buddies with Mohammed Hijab at one point, and then he turned on him. Sajid Lipham, he was buddies with, and then he turned on him.
Oh, really? So why is Hakikatju fighting with Hijab? I mean, what are their points of disagreement? Because I missed that.
I think he was just being too soft on the Israelis, and
Is he? I mean, he seems quite anti-Semitic to me. But I know hijab is certainly more hardline.
Well, now you get me thinking maybe I got that wrong, but no, I think it was over Yasser Ghadi.
Oh yes. So what did Yasser Ghadi say?
So Yasser Ghadi in 2015 was on with Medine. What's the MSNBC guy? He's not with them anymore. Mehdi Hassan. Yeah. He was like the religious editor for what's the magazine with the Serbian chick or something. Anyway, in 2015, Yasser Ghadi was on with Linda Sansura and talking about like partnering up with the gays, and because the gays are pro Islam because they're a minority in America and blah blah blah. And then anyways, Hijab had Yasser Ghadi on and he gave a big long interview, and Daniel didn't like that. He didn't press him on some things, and so I'm pretty sure they had a falling out over that.
Well, I mean, Mehdi Hassan can't be trusted anyway because he didn't have an Islamic education, so he's sort of totally westernized. He went to Oxford and read PPE.
Have you ever seen his? Have you ever seen this video on the Kafirs are like animals?
Mehdi Hassan?
Yeah. It's pretty funny. He gives a big long speech. He talks about Yazid the First. You know who Yazid the First was?
No.
He was the sixth caliphate. He attacked Mecca and Medina. He actually catapulted Mecca. I think the Black Stone was split into three. He sent an army from the Levant, Sham, to attack Medina. Who was his general? Aben Muslim, something Aben Muslim. He said, "Boys, you got 3 days. Do whatever you want." And they raped and pillaged. They said for a generation, Muslim men couldn't confirm their daughter's virginity in marriage because they'd raped so many women. The Battle of Al-Hara. You should Google that one. Show you how Muslims don't always follow their own rules, apparently.
Well, you don't need to tell me that. I mean, he's certainly not an Islamic scholar. I mean, but people think, oh, he's Muslim, but he's, he's his, what would you call him? A TV personality. Well,
right, like a televangelist.
Well, no. I mean, he's really a broadcaster, writer, and founder of the media company Zateo.
Zateo, yeah, that's after NSNBC fired him. He started his own little thing, so he's probably doing well. But here, I posted a link backstage if you want to pull it up, where he
Hmm.
talks about us kafirs being like animals.
Right.
Islam does not justify the means. It's totally alien in Islam.
Well, I mean, this is something Jews have been, believed to say about Gentiles, and I think all it means is that if you have no principles, you're no better than cattle, who can only be moved by
Right,
the carrot or the stick, or and you're basically asking to be lied to because you're you know you only want to be rewarded in material terms for doing
right,
the right thing, and you should do the right thing because it's just the right thing to do.
right. 2544. They are but like cattle. They are further astray from the right path. And I think Hassan mentions that in his speech.
Hmm.
But
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
so
I
so
wouldn't
that's interesting
dislike
enough.
anything. No.
So you talk about there's no compulsion in religion, which is great. I love that concept. But then when you say those who aren't Muslim are but like cattle, doesn't it suppose that we might be treated like animals?
No, well, it's part of the First Amendment to um, have the right to be offensive to people who, maybe
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want to be compared to cattle, but um, well, they can complain. Nobody's stopping them from complaining, and nobody's stopping the people from, who call them cattle from calling them cattle if that's what they
Right.
think. So
Or like in the
sticks
Quran,
and stones.
they say we are diseased, right? 2:7. There's disease in their heart, and Allah increases their disease. Uh,
Well, you could say, I mean, maybe it's a mental health issue. I mean, a lot of, neurosis is caused by denying the truth, wouldn't
well,
you say?
there you go. If you have a supreme leader and can't they rule? Those who don't believe in our God are mentally diseased. Therefore, we can institutionalize them. I was, like I said, I was just in Germany. We went to the topography of terror in Berlin, where the the Nazis ruled. What do they call it? Work shy. They said these people are work shy, right? And they started rounding up gypsies and people they thought weren't productive within society.
Um,
I think you're
Presumably
on a
to,
slippery slope, Claire.
I don't think so. I mean, it might have been that Hitler was going to make slaves of these gypsies who they didn't think was productive. And to be fair, to anyone who practiced slavery, it was never forbidden in either the Bible or the Quran.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Goes to show they're both bad books.
No, I mean, but then it pops up. I mean, it's not completely banned in America because prison labor in America is legal, and that's
Yes,
why you have companies like Serco who actually want a good supply of prison labor, and why Kamala Harris had the policy of putting people in prison to keep up the supply of prison labor to keep, I
sure.
guess, the
I used to work
shareholders of Serco happy.
right. I used to work in the flooring industry, and Anderson brags that it's American made flooring. Well, the only reason they can compete is because it's actually prison labor. So yeah, that's bad. Uh, you know, I would say if prisoners want to work, probably at a reduced rate but actually, yeah, they should have to be paid minimum wage because it's actually detrimental to the rest of the economy that you have prison labor. I mean, a lot of people talk about the fall of the Roman Empire. It was mostly because there were too many slaves.
Indeed. So they should have
The
been
Romans had
freed
too many
sooner.
slaves. It
They
killed
should have
the
been
economy.
freed. Yeah, they should have been freed sooner, so they became free people. I mean, under Islam, every slave has a right to manumission.
Well,
It was,
sure, but
and the Romans practiced it, but maybe not as much as they should have.
sure, and slaves, were, some of them got to high status within the Roman Empire.
Yeah, there was
I don't know if
civil
you ever watched
slaves.
HBO's Rome, where Caesar, he's got his one Greek slave next to him, and the guy's, giving advice to the Caesar. So
Yeah,
chattel slavery
Esau
and
was a
different things.
slave, wasn't he? Aesop
I mean,
was the most.
even in America, most slave owners obviously had huge plantations, cotton picking, and large number of slaves. But most slave owners worked alongside their slaves. They were, and we had indentured servitude and all that. But
Yeah, indentured servitude was what made America great. I mean, how do you think all these Europeans made the Atlantic crossing? Did they have the money to pay for the fare to cross the Atlantic? Of course they didn't.
right, sure. I mean, Irish women working as domestic workers, the rich guys paid their passage, and then they had a contract for so many years.
True.
And some would say indentured servitude is mentioned in the Bible, that it should be no more than 7 years. But then again, you get people who actually, if you Google like slavery in Pakistan in kilns, these guys making bricks, they can't read, they can't write, but they borrowed money. Like this guy, he had a medical expense. He borrowed money from the factory owner, and him and his whole family have been working there for 30 years since then, because the interest on the loan, although the Muslims claim they don't charge interest on the loan, it makes it so he's never going to pay it off. He's got like a 12-year-old boy who's like, I grew up here, I live here within the brick making factory.
Yeah, but it's slavery is the best form of workfare. It's the only way you can make workfare work, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know you're pro-slavery. I think that's very bad, Claire. You shouldn't be.
Well, I'm just showing. I'm trying to show people that I know that slavery is an institution. An institution should be regulated rather than banned, because if you ban it, then you actually take a lot of people outside the protection of the law, and their rights will be, in fact, abused. So, and also, I support prostitution in licensed brothels. In Germany, I understand that brothels are legal. Did you pass any when you were in?
Yeah. I walked through the red light district in Frankfurt. It's in Rick Steve's book. we did the walking tour, and then actually I was going to the grocery store at night one night, and I walked through there, and people were molesting me, trying to get me to go in there. I'm like, I was just passing through.
Hello, big boy.
Yeah. Hey, American. It's like, I'm good. But yeah,
weren't you in any way tempted?
What's that?
Weren't you in any way tempted?
Oh, I'm always tempted, of course. I have a little testosterone still.
Well, it would have been a nice holiday memory. But was it because you were near your sister?
There's not enough condoms to.
Did they offer you one anyway?
What's
I'm sure they did. Didn't they offer you one anyway?
I would hope they have a condom, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
I'm not that desperate yet. I'm maybe another 10 years. I might be up for paying for it. I'm like, I don't know if you ever watched Seinfeld, but where George was like, he wouldn't pay to go in a parking garage. He said it's just like going to a prostitute. If I apply myself, I can get it for free.
so you're still trying to get it for free.
I'm still going on the free tip. Yeah, I won't go into a parking garage, and I won't pay for a prostitute just yet.
What's this parking thing you were talking about?
It's just equating to like a parking garage that there's free parking on the street. You know,
Oh, right.
prostitutes like a parking garage.
Uh-huh. Oh, a parking garage. Okay.
Over in the UK, you guys probably always pay to park, huh?
Well, I mean, people pay to. Well, they pay to use some, people's garages. Is that what you mean?
No, I just mean like a big parking garage where you pay a couple bucks for an hour or something. It's a convenience thing. Same with prostitutes. It's like
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
you can drive around the block looking for free parking on the street, or you can just pay.
Mm-hmm.
So how much is it to park in London? Like are you in London?
I'm not a car owner.
Oh, you don't own a car. You just walk around, huh?
Well, I mean, most Londoners are not drivers, and because
Gotcha.
I guess you don't really need to. Why would you pay the insurance and the parking fines and the speeding tickets and all kinds of things if your job doesn't absolutely require it? Because they do punish you just for owning a car. And it's the wrong kind of car. You got to sell it, or we're going to charge you extra for driving down the road to visit your mum. Something like that. That's what they do now under this ULEZ thing, the ultra low emission zone thing, which is basically an excuse to victimize motorists. Oh yes, and then they lowered the speed limit to 20 miles per hour, just to get people, but they sold it as, all these grannies and children getting run over in speeding cars, you must lower it from 30 to 20. And they did.
Right? That's what we call speed traps in America.
Yeah.
Just money-making enterprises.
Mm.
All right. Best not to drive in London.
No, it's not a good idea unless your job absolutely requires it. So I hope, Mike, we can do this thing. What's the title again? Caliphs cannot be kings. Are Muslims moronic monarchists? Oh, do you know Brown's Boy?
Seen him somewhere before, maybe on The Machine Lies.
Mm-hmm.
Brown's Boy, are you on The Machine Lies?
Oh, right. Yes, you go there too. Anything new there?
I was a little bit surprised. He said he eats mushrooms like once a week.
Well, he smokes bongs.
He smokes a lot of pot. That's for sure. But yeah, he said he eats mushrooms once a week. I was like, well, I haven't eaten mushrooms since I was at a Nine Inch Nails Jane Addiction concert, probably 10 years ago or so. That was a crazy ride home. I probably shouldn't have driven, but anyway, I survived.
Well, I think there's too many people taking too many drugs. That's why you can't get any sense out of them. So instead of wisdom, we get dementia. Well,
I don't know. Psilocybin, they're back to doing studies on it, and it seems to be pretty beneficial. I'll give you synthetic drugs probably aren't the greatest thing in the world, but
Mm.
Mushrooms seem to do some good. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll study it. Do you know the Violent Femmes?
It's a
American music.
band.
It is a band out of Wisconsin. Hang on.
Hmm. Well, I'll be talking to E. Michael Jones later about his latest book.
Oh, that crazy guy, the, the white supremacist, E. Michael Jones.
Well, it's not fair to call him a white supremacist because he denies the concept of race, saying,
Oh, okay.
well, I mean, it's probably fairer to call him an anti-Semite, but I think his whole shtick is really to use Jews to attack Protestants. I think Protestants are his real target. So I think his shtick is to say, we Catholics knew exactly what to do with those Jews until you came along and took over. And look what the world has become. It's all your fault. You with your Henry VIII, and you with your Martin Luther, and you with your Calvin. Make America Catholic again. Something like that. Make
That
white people Catholic again, I guess, is what he's trying to do.
right. That's funny because in Germany we didn't take it, but there's the Protestant Trail. We did go to in Berlin. What was it? St. Mary's. Surprise was a church for the Lutherans, and actually the big cathedral, the Berlin Cathedral, was Lutheran because we looked up and there's like these 4 statues, and I asked my nephew, "Who are those guys?" And they were all Lutherans.
Right. What did you think of Lutheran churches in Germany?
I couldn't tell any different between them and the Catholic churches.
Oh, right. Yes. That's interesting.
Berlin Cathedral. Yeah. Have you been to Germany?
Yes, a few times. I've always had a lovely time. I do like the German people. I feel bad for them that they kind of, well, that the British were not fair to them. But then, since when were they fair to anybody, really?
Have you seen the Berlin Cathedral
I haven't been to Berlin.
on the River Spree? Oh, okay.
No. I'd like to.
Well, where have you been in Germany?
I've been to Frankfurt. I've been to Cologne. I've been to
That's right. You knew there was a McDonald's next to the cathedral in Cologne.
yes, and a few of the bigger cities in the Frankfurt area, but it was mostly the smaller towns.
Was it Baden-Baden? We didn't go to. Right
I've been to
outside.
Wiesbaden.
Yeah, I like Frankfurt. Did you go to what was the museum we went to the first day we were there? Spaten, something like that. So Frankfurt has a museum bank on the river, and we didn't buy it, but it was like a pass for like $30 to go to like 40 different museums. But
Oh, right.
we weren't going to be there long enough.
It was free that day.
No, that's when we were in Cologne. We just happened to be in
Okay.
Cologne on the free museum day.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the Ludwig Museum that was more modern stuff. I forget the name of the other one. We went to another one. That's the one that had like Monet's in it. I'm thinking I'm good at art because I was in a big room and I was like, oh, I like that one. I like that one. I like that one. I went to them and they were all Monet's. The other ones were
Huh,
lesser artists, I guess. So maybe I have a good eye.
I see. Yes. Do you have a favorite artist?
No,
Hmm.
I'm not that highfalutin to have a favorite artist.
Well, you seem to like Monet's. Hmm.
I do like Monet's.
Monet
Okay.
Mike.
There we go. We'll change it. I like alliteration, so
Me
Michael
too.
Monet also.
Yes, I was. What do you call it? The place where the three rivers meet place in that area. I've forgotten the names now, but Bad Ems was one of the prettier places I visited.
Hmm. Three Rivers meet in
Wiesbaden.
Germany. You're talking like the
Yes, yes,
Danube.
very. Yes, the
I know there's
Danube.
three rivers in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
The Danube, the Rhine, and the ELBE.
Oh, yes. Yes, I remember that. That was some time.
PASSAU, located in Bavaria. It's known as the city of the three rivers.
Mhm.
Passau.
No, I don't think it was that name. Hold on. Germany, Three Rivers. It's called a tributary, isn't it? No, no. Oh, I don't even know my geography.
It says the Danube flows into the Black Sea, the Elbe into the North Sea, and the Rhine flows into the North Sea. PASSAU, located in
Passau.
Bavaria. It's known as the
Hmm.
city of three rivers.
A confluence, not a tributary. Hmm.
Yeah, tributaries are the little things that go out from the river.
Yes, yes. Hmm.
Smaller rivers.
Did you like Germany?
I was very impressed
I
by
thought
some
the
of the
people
people.
were so nice too. I thought I thought German.
Well,
Well,
I was
I
surprised
always
because
liked German people.
I was surprised because everybody's like, oh, everybody speaks English and stuff, and a lot of people didn't speak English. I think, like my uncle, my parents have been to Germany 3, 4 times. I think they
Hmm.
went and visited the relatives, and they're like, oh, everybody speaks English and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I think maybe all those people are dying off that spoke English after World War II and stuff. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of people were like, yeah, no English, no English. But I talked to one girl on the train and her English was pretty good. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, my English is not so good. I'm like, no, it's fine. Um,
Hmm.
I talked to like two doctors on the train. I just happened to be sitting next to them. They spoke pretty good English. And
Hmm.
it was funny. The one train was like full. We couldn't get a seat. So we went to the bar car, ordered a beer, and there was a big table like that sat four, and there was a guy sitting there by himself. And so me, my sister, my nephew sat with him and started talking to him. He was working on his laptop a little bit, but then it was funny. He spoke like with a British accent, but he looked Asian. And then he said he was born in Germany. And then at one point he's like, yeah, I know I maybe don't look like I'm a German, but his father was Filipino and
Hmm.
his mother was German, and they met that his mother was the father's English teacher or something. But anyway,
Hmm.
it was just interesting. He was literally born in Berlin in the 80s, and remembers the wall and stuff. And that's my nephew is big on whole East Germany versus West Germany and the wall and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of hijabis.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a lot of Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Again, then I thought about it and I'm like, well, it's probably not one out of every 30. Like you got a whole train car and there's one hijabi, like, it stands out in your head, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like they're overrunning the country. But
Mm-hmm.
the one hotel we stayed in Munich, there was a strip club across the street, and at night the whole street seemed to be full of Arabs and Africans, Somalis or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Interesting to see the demographics of it and stuff. One guy I talked to on the bus, he was a gynecologist. He was a Turk, but
Mm-hmm.
spoke good English and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to say it wasn't Passau I was thinking of. I was thinking of a place where two rivers meet, and it was Koblenz. So I'm sure that's nowhere near Passau, where I have not visited.
Yeah, well, there's always rivers around.
Mm-hmm.
You can't build a city without a river.
Yes, that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
You always need water.
Hmm?
I just said you always need water.
Yes, 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 that would make sense because for breweries and things, haha. Do you have any? What?
I was gonna say, apparently, my great grandfather, my dad tells a story like his. I mean, my great grandfather, his grandfather was like, "Oh, they closed the brewery down." This is up in Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
They closed the brewery down. How can you have a town without a brewery?
Mm-hmm.
Old German guy.
It's not civilized.
Yeah. I remember this was probably in the 90s. They were saying there was a German beer had gotten so much market share. They were worried like, oh, we'll become like the Americans where Budweiser, it dominates and we'll only get 3-4 beers. Well, Budweiser has, 60% market share in America, but this brewery in Germany, they were worried about taking over so much market share, had 3%.
So, do you have a favorite tipple? Do you have a favorite beer?
Yingling is probably my favorite beer. The oldest
It sounds
American.
like Dingaling.
Yingling? Yeah.
Yingling. How do you spell that? It sounds Chinese.
I always thought it was Native American because but it's German. It's Yuenlyng. Let's see. Yeah, I can't spell it.
Yingling beer. Apparently, there's a brewery in Pakistan.
There's a brewery in Pakistan. So Yingling, obviously, they would have had a shutdown during Prohibition, but they're considered the oldest American brewery. They're in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, like, have you heard of the Whiskey Rebellion?
Vaguely.
In America, all the whiskey guys were up in Pennsylvania, where the Scotch Irish were. And then after the Revolution, Washington, as a means to raise some money, started taxing whiskey. Because before that, people just kind of traded it, bartered whiskey as kind of like as currency.
Right.
And so the whiskey guys all kind of rioted and rebelled. and Washington sending like 10,000 troops to squash them. And so they all fled to what was the frontier at the time, which was Kentucky and Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, originally, whiskey was all made up in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh. So, it's an IPA, is it?
Yingling?
Your
No,
Yingling?
it's a lager.
No. Okay. Oh, excuse me. For some reason, I like IPA.
A lot of hops in the IPA.
Mm.
Those came out of India for the Brits, right? That was for
Yes.
transport reasons.
Indian Pale Ale.
Yeah. We
Do you have
drink
any?
lagers. We drink lagers and pilsners in America mostly, but yeah, the IPA. The hipsters like the IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
Too heavy to drink all day for me.
Is that what you drink all day?
Well, I've switched to vodka recently, so.
Oh, that's terrible. I have noticed. Too many what?
Too many calories in beer.
Right. Well, that's not good for you. Switching to spirits, that's very bad. I have noticed. Yes, I'm afraid I've noticed that you are sort of slowing or slowed down. So that's something I've noticed.
What's that? You're saying I'm getting drunk?
Yeah, I think if you listen to yourself,
probably
after this to the last time we last spoke, you are speaking more slowly.
You're 100%.
So I'm expressing concern, Mike. I think you should think of going on the wagon.
No, I just had a big debate with a woman in the bar the other day about on the wagon, off the wagon. Again, the Seinfeld episode. But anyway, well, I'll let you guys be. I don't want to start slurring too much.
Okay. Well, I want you to keep well so we can, do our thing on your channel. The Muslim moron monarchists and the caliphs can't be kings thing. So I wish you well. I hope you keep well and maybe switch back to ding-a-ling beers and catch up with you soon. I hope.
Okay, maybe Brown Boy will come on.
I have to go and maybe do a bit of homework on E. Michael Jones and American Identity. And oh yes, do you have any questions or issues you'd like to raise about American Identity? I guess I'm trying to research or come up with a theme for my discussion.
I would just say tell that militant Catholic, if push comes to shove, us secularists will have to kill him.
Well, are you pleased with an American Pope? Do you sort of feel it's making America great to have an American Pope?
Couldn't care less.
All right. I mean, I noticed that, even Americans who were sort of cynical about religion were kind of puffing their chest out, like, the Pope is American. Yeehaw. Something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a billion Catholics, so like I said, personally, I couldn't care less. I went to Catholic school, and it was funny because we had a basketball reunion. I played basketball, but anyways, somebody put in the text with 5 or 6 of us on it, and he's like, "Hey, first American Pope." And the one guy's like, "There's never been an American Pope." And I was in Germany at the time, so I didn't bother responding. But I'm like, are you are you insane? The popes have all been Italian until John Paul II. He was the first non-Italian, right? And Ratzenberg was a German, and then Frank was Argentinian, South American sort. But anyways, even the Catholics don't know there's never been an American pope until now.
Yeah, that seems like such a blatant power grab, in my view, and such a CIA appointment, she said conspiratorially. But we'll see.
Well, I actually, speaking of when I went to Germany, I actually have I think he's a third cousin who's a cardinal, apparently. So both my sisters and my one of my two brothers, have been to the Vatican and have visited the cardinal in the family, gotten like backstage, into the Vatican. So maybe when I jump over to England and see you and Mohammed, I'll go to Italy and try to get, because it's funny, the Muslims are big on, I don't know if you know the hadith of when Muhammad's on his deathbed and there should only be one religion on the peninsula. So like the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia in 2015, I think, said they should destroy all churches in Arabia. And I was on Ali Dawa, and the Sheikh was like, he's saying, well, it would be like building a mosque in the Vatican. I'm like, well, you do realize the Vatican's less than half a square mile, whereas Saudi Arabia is like 800,000 square miles. So it's not really comparable. But I'm thinking, if I can get in front of the Pope, I'll tell him to build a little tiny mosque. Apparently, you only need 4 people for a quorum in Islam. Build it like in the Vatican, so the Muslims can't be like, well, you guys wouldn't allow a mosque in the Vatican, so we don't have to allow churches on the Arabian Peninsula.
Yes. Right. Well, I hope you'll listen to my chat with E. Michael Jones. I hope.
Okay, when is it?
It's in 4 hours. In 4 hours.
All right.
Yes.
If I don't pass out by then, hang on. Hey Siri, set an alarm for 4 hours from now.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thank you for doing that. I'll make sure it's extra good for you.
All right. I'll be in the chat trying to razz you.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me, and speak to you before too long.
All right, cool.
In 4 hours, in fact.
In 4 hours.
Yes. All right. Have a good rest, Mike, and yes. See you soon.
See you
Bye,
later.
everyone. Bye.